killed the Panthers. 84 yards passing for Bryce Young. That's it. 84 in an entire game. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't pass. They couldn't run the ball. They lose. I don't think there's much to say here on the Charger side. Good for the Chargers. We'll have one quick update in a moment. But
Mike's Chargers.
Chargers. They're 2-0. One quick update in a moment on the Chargers. But after the game, Dave Canales, the kindergarten teacher, said, well, Bryce is still our quarterback. And then not even 24 hours later, he said, Andy Dalton's our quarterback now. Never mind. I went through a lot of emotions.
Teacher, I can see why he wanted to stick with Bryce Young as long as he could, seeing as he's probably familiar dealing with.
Very true. Very true. So, I went through the gambit of emotion. I still don't know where I stand. I still think Bryce Young is a bad
taller than Bryce Young.
I do stand taller than him. Most people do.
I'm sitting down and I think he stands taller than Bryce Young.
I think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's the wrong pick. I think he needs to be replaced. Maybe not this way, though. I don't know if this was right.
But if you're going to do it, why not? Like, if you know in your mind we're moving on from him, why
wait?
Why wait? See what you can do with Andy Dalton. See if he's still got something in the tank to give you a little bit of friskiness for a bit, and move along. I saw actually Baker Mayfield said something about. They asked him, and Baker actually had like a really sort of classy, like veteran leader like comment, which is surprising, but not, because I think that's kind of who Baker's turned into. Yeah. And he's basically like, some dudes just aren't in the right place and it's not the right mix. He goes, it wasn't for me. And then I kind of found where I am now. And is there a place for Bryce Young someplace? Potentially. Is it going to be as a premier starting quarterback? Probably not. Could he be like a Taysom Hill thing where they kind of, maybe he puts on a little muscle or bulks up a little bit and they can use him as like a flex player or something? Like,
I don't know. I mean, to be fair, it hasn't looked good. It couldn't look any worse.
Well, but again, you look at these guys. I mean, look, I was going to come to this point later when we talked about the Niners game and Sam Darnold. Like, once you get out of a crappy organization, there's a distinct possibility you might actually be good. Like, Geno Smith and Sam Darnold are like balling this year, and like former Jets quarterbacks are apparently what you want to pick up on the free market. Maybe Zach Wilson's got a shot at him at one point. I don't think he does. I would put it this way: if you can't beat Bo Nix for the job, that's the writing on the wall. But maybe Bryce Young's just in the wrong place. But I don't think it's so. I just don't think he physically has got the tools for the game. Sadly.
Doesn't seem that way. There's another theory I have. That is, there's two theories. There's one that David Tepper just got sick of this and finally was like, all right, we were wrong, pull the plug. But the other theory is like, they're going to bring him back. They just don't want him to die against Max Crosby this week, I guess. They're going to pull him and not have him get crushed in that game and try to bring him back at a later time where it's an easier matchup.
Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes the starting job back this year, but it's not out of like, hey, you're the best quarterback for the job. It's Dalton shits the bed just as bad as Bryce Young shits the bed. I think Dalton's just going to be very boring. And I say this as a man who will always be an Andy Dalton fan for what he did for the Bills, but right. I cannot imagine it's going to be a massive turn for them. I think your offense is going to look slightly more competent, but there were some problems on the defense that need to be addressed, and there's nothing changing quarterbacks is going to do to help.
Well, and the other thing is too, like, you run the risk of this like quarterbacking leapfrog of just losing the entire locker room.
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, guys are like, all right, if you're going to flip flop this position, like, who's to say I'm not next? Like, it could be just one of those things where like you take your lumps and you make it through this year, and then you sort of rebuild what you're going to do, and you don't want to alienate as many. There might be some players you want to keep.
And also remember, two of the Raiders' top three defensive ends aren't going to play in the game this Sunday because Kuntz is hurt and Wilson's probably not going to play. And so, like, the way the Panthers' offensive line is, who would you look at and say would be an easy matchup to put Bryce back in?
I don't know. They invested in those two guards. The line should be better.
It's also early. Like, it could gel later, but right now, right.
Well, and again, I think I might have said this last week too. There's this. I think a lot of the rust you're seeing is the fact that teams don't play in the preseason anymore.
No,
They
not at all.
should get to 3 games.
They should have put them in the
Like,
preseason. I thought it was
absolutely.
weird.
And when we get to the Eagles, we'll talk about this too. About like a lot of those dudes like didn't play in the preseason, and it kind of shows.
Yeah.
And I think there's just getting up to game speed, and it's only been 2 games, but I think part of it is just rust. Like guys are rusty.
The one thing about the Dalton move that I'm interested in is, I mean, the team's not going anywhere. They're not going to win more than 4 games with Dalton. Maybe they win 4, but they're not making the playoffs. Like none of that's happening.
No.
The Bucks are 2-0. Like it's not happening.
Not with the reemergent New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, the Saints and the Bucks are both 2-0. There's no way that they're going to make the playoffs. But I am curious to see, like, can the line hold up with Dalton? Is it a Bryce problem? Is Leggett actually any good? Can we see him actually do stuff? And
Dalton and maybe that's the rationale. You do get some answers about the rest of your team.
Yeah,
with Dalton.
right. That's what I want to see. Like, is it truly the team sucks? Or is it Bryce sucks?
Well,
is that what we're going to find out? Or is it both? Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Bryce ain't going to be around next year, I don't think. I don't see how you mend this fence with him. I think he, like I said, he could come back and just start out of necessity, and I think he would want to maybe try to show off for the next team, but I don't see how he's on your team next year. In which case, do you draft? This is not shaping up to be that great of a draft class for quarterbacks. I think a lot of people had higher expectations going into this year, but so far I'm not blown away by these guys. What's that?
There's only 2 or 3 guys that stand out.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's like a Desmond Ridder class. It's better than that.
No,
but like,
it is.
I'm sure Drew will talk about it too at the Stripe Spire, with a looming presence, not this year, but next year, going to be in the NFL draft. Like, I think teams are going to have to take into consideration, do we take a first-round quarterback now, or do we try for the big fish 2 years from now? So, I don't know.
I do think there's 2 points I want to make before we move off of these guys, because they don't deserve this much time.
Because we're the only football show in America that's been talking for 8 minutes about the Panthers in the A block.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to talk about
who? Come on.
Well,
in the A block. I like how you think this is very professional. Like we have blocks written out.
Yeah.
Well, we have a 40-minute A block, and then the rest just kind of comes
we have
together.
a jerk-off flamingo behind me. Okay.
We started the show with that last week. So,
but before we go to that, Ryan, like I pulled up his Bryce's contract. He's in contract through 2026.
Yeah.
And
doesn't mean they can't trade him.
Well, who's going to take him? Who's going to here? Are you going to take Bryce Young for $22.5 million, Ryan?
Somebody will take him.
He's a dead money cap hit next year for $22.4.
That's not as bad as Russell.
Michigan Panthers on line 1.
Yeah. UFL, here we come. There's 2 more draft things I want to bring up. One, there's no guarantee the Panthers can pick a quarterback that is good.
True.
So even if they do get the number 1 pick,
you find yourself in,
and decide to pick a quarterback, I don't have the confidence that they're going to pick the right guy.
If they decide to wait and think, hey, we're going to be crappy enough to get the pick again.
That's what I'm saying.
And like the suck for Arch Manning sweepstakes. There's no way in hell the Mannings are going to let him play in Charlotte.
No chance.
They wouldn't let Eli play in San Diego. They're not going to let him play in Carolina for Dave
unless Peyton Manning is the coach. He's not going there.
Yeah,
no. I think that's an interesting point about Arch, because he does have so many years of eligibility left. If he gets to, not this year, but next year, and sees that the Panthers have the number 1 overall pick, he'll just say, well, junior year don't look so bad.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the other thing.
Make the same money.
Well, that's just it. Now with the NIL, the Mannings aren't hurting for money to begin with. Even
I was going to say, Arch doesn't need them.
Right. But he'll make more money hanging around college than he will probably as out of rookie contract.